Welcome to a special episode of Sports Seriously, where we are talking everything related to the 2022 World Cup in Qatar. We're extra excited because our own men's national team is back in the biggest tournament in the world for the first time since 2014. So for this special episode, we had to bring in some very special guests. Joining me is Emily Olsen, assistant editor for USA Today Sports Plus. We also have the captain of the 2000 U.S. men's Olympic team and current TV analyst, Brian Dunseth. So let's get right into it. Brian, we've waited a long 8 years for this moment. You know, with your experience with the U.S. men's national team, what are the players probably feeling right now?
Oh, excitement, pride. You could put all the superlatives to it. From a big picture perspective, when you talk about what this means for the U.S. soccer fan base, you go back 5 years ago and the disappointment, Christian Pulisic crying on the field knowing he missed out on a World Cup, Clint Dempsey, Tim Howard, amongst others, missing out on their final World Cup. There is nothing, and I don't care what anybody says, whether you're under 15, under 19, under 20, going to the Olympics, playing for the U.S. men's national team, the moment that you put on that crest, that jersey goes over your head and it sits on your heart, there is nothing that will ever replicate that feeling, especially for these players that have the incredible opportunity of playing in a World Cup.
It makes a lot of sense. Emily, you've covered soccer for quite some time now. The women held it down domestically. Now it's the fellas' time. How excited is everybody to be in this moment?
I mean, how can you not be excited at the top level? Like Denny said, we've waited so long for this. They're coming back to a World Cup, and it's just a different level in this country when your team is in the competition. We see that with the women's team time and time again, but Russia was different. The Russia World Cup in 2018, when the men weren't there, it was still fun, but it was different, and this is going to just be that extra level now having the U.S. in the tournament.
Well, I'm excited, so that makes three of us. Now, let's get right down to brass tacks here. The rosters have been revealed and are set. Here are the 26 Americans that will represent the U.S. in Qatar, and we have Brian at the big board to help us break down what we should know about this U.S. men's national team.
Well, two big omissions for Greg Berhalter. First, you got to talk about no Ricardo Pepi, and you have to talk about no Zach Steffen. So when you take a look at this roster, let's start with goalkeepers. That means Matt Turner is undisputed number one with Ethan Horvath, Sean Johnson backing him up. Talk about defenders, guys that have played all over the world. Serginho Dest at AC Milan. Cameron Carter-Vickers plays at Glasgow Celtic. Tim Ream, Anthony Robinson at Fulham. Joe Scally at Borussia Mönchengladbach. And then MLSers Aaron Long, Shaq Moore, DeAndre Yedlin, Walker Zimmerman round out the back line. In the midfield, a little bit of a surprise, Brendan Aronson, not that he made the roster, but that he's tacked as a midfielder because of the position that he plays for Leeds United alongside his teammate Tyler Adams. Weston McKennie at Juventus. Kellen Acosta just won an MLS Cup final with LAFC. Yunus Musa, fantastic player playing in La Liga at Valencia. And then Christian Roldan, Luca De La Torre, both deemed fit enough to make this team. Now, at the forward position, you got to talk about Christian Pulisic. He is the star of this group. Gio Reyna, whose father, Claudio Reyna, the captain or former captain of the U.S. men's national team, one of the best players I ever had the opportunity to play alongside. Jesus Ferreira, Josh Sargent, Tim Weah, Jordan Morris makes the roster over Paul Oriola. And then finally, Haji Wright, probably the biggest surprise, 9 goals so far in the Turkish Super League. So he makes the roster over Ricardo Pepi. But when you're talking about what this potential starting 11 could look like against Wales, I think the team kind of picks itself right now. I think Matt Turner in goal, back four of Anthony Robinson, Aaron Long, Walker Zimmerman, Serginho Dest. Tyler Adams will sit and protect. Weston McKennie, Yunus Musa will both be hybrids of two-way players and yet attacking players in that central part of the midfield. Christian Pulisic on the left-hand side, Tim Weah over on the right-hand side, and up top, you could say Jesus Ferreira, you could say Josh Sargent, you could say Haji Wright. I'm not sure. Still think this is the biggest question mark when you're talking about Greg Berhalter and what his decisions will be. But when you talk about the superstar of this group, make no mistake about it, it will be that man, Christian Pulisic, 24 years of age. And you go back to that visual of him crying on the field at Trinidad and Tobago. At the time, he was at Borussia Dortmund, killing it in the Bundesliga, killing it in Champions League, and we thought he was going to be that first big £75 million transfer. Well, he ended up getting that, but not because he went to the World Cup, because he was that good of a player going to Chelsea Football Club. I think Clint Dempsey said it best, heavy's the head that wears the crown. The pressure is on Christian Pulisic because you're talking about him being amongst the likes of Neymar, Mbappe, Cristiano Ronaldo, and Lionel Messi. So we know who the superstar is. What about the supporting cast? These are three players that I think are going to be tremendously important when you talk about success for the U.S. men's national team and Christian Pulisic. Weston McKennie, who plays his domestic football at Juve, his personality, his technical ability, the way he thrives in a match. He's so important kind of in that upper left-hand region of the central part of the midfield. Brendan Aronson, if you watch him in the Premier League week in, week out, he alongside Tyler Adams at Leeds United, underneath Jesse Marsch, have been fantastic. He no holds barred, full throttle, 100% of the time. He plays different than any other player in that central midfield type of role. And then Tyler Adams. I say this lovingly. He's my little chihuahua. He's my little ankle biter. He's the guy that's going to destroy and run down everything. So these are the three guys that you want to keep an eye on. But if you want kind of outliers, you want young players. There's two players in particular, both 19. What were you doing at 19? 19 years of age. Yunus Musa at Valencia. His ability in tight spaces, turning with multiple defenders on him, extraordinary. He's got power, pace, most importantly, he's got the brains. And when you talk about one of the upcoming young players in international football and domestic football, his performances at Borussia Dortmund, he is the guiding light of this next generation. And I know Christian is the guy, but if there was like the guy underneath the guy, it's going to be this guy, Gio Reyna, 19 years of age. This is going to be his quote-unquote coming out party. And good news, even though he missed the majority of qualifying because of injury, 6 consecutive matches for Borussia Dortmund. So he's going to feel good, healthy, strong, and looking for that impact. But like we talked about before the show, you got a bunch of young guys that are incredibly talented. But who are maybe the one or two players that are going to be breakout opportunists for the U.S. men's national team?
Yeah, I mean, there's not a lot to disagree with what Dunny said. Like he said, right now, the roster kind of picks itself with a couple of question marks here and there. One of the guys I want to highlight, just from how he works on the field, he won't be the golden star, but it's Brendan Aronson. And I know you have Philly roots. He's from Medford, New Jersey. He played in the Philadelphia Union Academy before going overseas, and now he's with Leeds. And what he provides is he is an absolute engine for this midfield. He is able to run around. He's able to stick in. He's able to get tackles. He's listed as a midfielder. Previously, he was, he played a lot on the wing, which is a little bit more of a forward role. He'll be able to do both of those, I think, in this tournament. But he's really just going to be, I think, free to really make that strong impact that maybe Christian Pulisic will be tied down to because he's got the pressure. We've seen the commercials. It's all in his head. He knows the expectations, and no matter who you are, that's going to weigh on you.
So here's who they're playing against in the group stage, starting with Wales, then a mega matchup against England on Black Friday, and rounding out with Iran. Brian, what does the men's path to the knockout stage look like?
It has to start with a positive result against Wales. At a bare minimum, you've got to take a single point, meaning a draw. In an ideal world, obviously all three. You can't be in a situation where you're going up against England, who is going to be our most formidable opponent on the field. And listen, we can be naive and we can be insecure as U.S. fans because every morning we wake up and we watch the Premier League and we're going to be overawed by the stars that Gareth Southgate has in his roster. But I would gently remind Wayne Rooney, who we'll hear later in the show from, that we drew against England in 2010 World Cup, and we actually were above them in the group stage. And then finally, Iran. It's such a different matchup when you talk about the geopolitical situation, and then a team that is much, much better than people are giving them credit for. So in an ideal world, you want to be sitting on at least 5 points to give yourself a chance to go through. 4 points is cutting it really, really close. And the last thing you want to do is go into that final game against Iran needing to win, because then there's so many other variables that come into play.
So, Emily, I have to ask you, let's talk about expectations. If the team doesn't make the knockout stage, is it a disappointment?
I don't think it is. If you ask the players, if you ask the coach, they're obviously going to say yes. I mean, Greg Berhalter is looking at this World Cup in 2 sections. He's looking at the group stage as a tournament and the knockout round as a tournament. You have to do well in the group stage tournament to get to the knockout round. And I think that as long as they don't come out and totally blow it, if they're coming in third, and maybe it's England and Iran, or England and Wales that come above them, I think that they can come out knowing it's okay, because guess what? In 4 years, it's coming home. And to steal a line from the English, it's coming home. It's Mexico, it's Canada, it's the U.S. hosting the World Cup. We have an automatic bid. We have all of this young talent now. And then we have new talent that didn't make the roster, that we haven't seen yet, that is going to be a part of it. So I see this as a building block. I think that the players would say it's a disappointment, but I do think on the plane home, if they don't make it out of the group stage, each one of those players will be able to feel relief and instant refocus for 2026.
Hey, sports fans, if you want to see more conversations with athletes and stars, check out these videos right here and be sure to subscribe for more from USA Today Sports.